Hello and good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar, How Technology Can Help Rapidly Growing Companies Scale Their Immigration Programs. Thank you to everyone currently listening in, and if you're also somewhere where it's below freezing, hope you are safe and warm. Again, can't thank you again for joining us today. All right, so we have a great discussion ahead, but before we get there, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, and we will send a link to download this recording after today's live session. We also encourage everyone listening in to ask some questions throughout the presentation. And if you'd like to ask those questions, please do so using the GoToWebinar window that you see on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll try to get to them toward the end of the main presentation. All right, so now I'd like to introduce today's panelists. We've got a full house. First, I'd like to introduce Jacqueline Pettit, an associate attorney at Global Immigration Associates, Envoy's affiliated law firm. Next, we have Greg Legal, principal product manager. And finally, I'd like to welcome Michael Coletti, the director of customer relations team. So it's also Michael's first webinar. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Greg, Michael, Jacqueline, so glad you're here.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Eric, for having us. Really.
All right, and for those that are unfamiliar with Envoy, Envoy has been on a mission to fix the confusing, frustrating, and inefficient immigration process. Envoy combines expert legal representation with innovative technology to deliver the only platform that that makes it seamless for companies to hire, mobilize, and manage a global workforce. We secure work authorization in 150 plus countries, have grown 46% year to date, and work with over 1,000 customers. We are particularly proud of our NPS score, which is a testament to the employee experience that we provide. All right, so moving on to our last introduction slide. If you take a look at your screen, I'd like to just outline a brief agenda that we'll be going over today, starting with some common pain points that some companies may be feeling you may be familiar with, and then moving into how some top technology features can help alleviate those pains. And then again, if you have questions, we'll wrap everything up today with a question and answer session. All right, so let's jump into some common issues facing some fast-growing companies. Let's start with their immigration services providers can't keep up. Now, stop us if you've experienced this before. You're required to sit in on every single call with, let's say, a traditional immigration services provider for every single foreign national. This time-consuming process isn't very helpful if you need to hire foreign talent quickly. And then also, if you take a look at your screen, another common pain point is the slow communications process. It's quite common to work with traditional immigration service providers via email. And I'm sure everyone listening in knows that while email is vital, it can become cumbersome and at times overwhelming when threads start to encompass, 5, 10, or more messages. It's just really hard to keep track of those things. Delays at any point, especially with H-1B cap petition season coming up, any type of delay can result in headaches for HR and severely dampen the employee experience. So now, let's ask ourselves, how can technology help? And this is where we're going to go over a couple of these technology features that companies, especially those that are growing fast, can rely on and just improve the overall immigration process. So let's start with the first tech feature then that can help our listeners, a smart questionnaire. Now this feature can pre-populate data and eliminate redundant data entry. So I'm going to turn over to Greg. Greg, if you don't mind, can you talk a little bit more about how Smart Questionnaire can save time? And the second part of that question is then provide a positive employee experience?
Sure. First of all, Eric, thanks so much for having us. I think we all have that experience of having to fill out forms, and I don't think anyone likes to fill out forms. In fact, I think most people actually hate filling out forms, right? You have a lot of stuff going on in your daily life. You have a lot of stuff that you need to take care of. And really the last thing you want to do is spend a whole bunch of time filling out a bunch of forms, even if you need to do that to get your job done, right? So in the case of what we're working on here at Envoy is we've built intelligent questionnaires for all of our various visa types that we support. So H-1Bs, green cards, Ls, TNs, and so on and so forth. And what we really mean by a smart questionnaire is we want to do a couple things with that, right? So on the first hand, if we know a bunch of information about you or about the foreign nationals that, are employees of your various companies, we can use that information to already sort of pre-populate some of that information within the questionnaire itself, right? So, if we know your employees' names, for example, or we know, what type of visa they are currently on, then we can use that information as they go through the questionnaire process to already sort of pre-answer those questions so you never have to fill it out. In fact, once you've gone through and you've actually filled out, say, an H-1B questionnaire with us, on the employer side of things, you're almost about 60% of the way already done, right? Most of the information actually doesn't change very often. The kind of information that does change would be the information around a job, for example. And so we need you to go through and we need you to fill out that information and double check that information. But we want to make that as really as streamlined and as simplified as possible. The other thing that intelligent questionnaires means, at least for me, is that we don't want to ask you a whole bunch of questions that aren't relevant to your particular situation. And a great example would be on an employee, right? If we may need to ask information around whether or not that employee has dependents or not. But if the employee doesn't have dependents, there's absolutely no reason why we should ask a whole bunch of questions about their dependents, right? So it's making the questionnaires responsive to some sort of basic questions, and then either collapsing or expanding the questionnaire sections to get all the necessary information that we need to help you obviously provide the most complete data when you're preparing a visa petition, but at the same time minimizing that so we're not asking unnecessary information.
Great, thanks. So now I'd like to switch over to the other side of the room and talk with Michael. Michael, can you kind of, from the client perspective, how does this smart questionnaire impact the employee experience, and can you talk a little bit more about that side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the employee side as well, once we've captured their relevant information, background information on an initial case, so perhaps maybe you do an H-1B transfer for them, that information is saved in the platform, and then when that extension, or perhaps you decide to open a green card for that employee, that all that basic background information as well as documentation will pre-populate for the foreign national as well. So again, it eliminates a lot of frustration on their end, a lot of back and forth hopefully on your end, needing to reach out to them to fill out information or provide additional details. Again, it's a time saver really for both HR as well as the foreign national.
Definitely. And that kind of leads us into this next top tech feature called case status. So sometimes for our listeners listening in, sometimes you may be wondering about the status of an employee's case, and obviously that employee is also going to be curious about his or her case. But there are going to be those times where you just simply don't know what actions, if any, need to be taken under a traditional immigration process. So in turn, these situations may lead to anxious and worried employees, which again then may lead to just not as great of an employee experience. Turning back to Greg, can you talk about how the benefits of being able to easily track the status of individual cases and I guess see what actions need to be taken?
Sure, absolutely. So we know that when it comes to a foreign national and they're going through what for them is obviously an incredibly meaningful and incredibly anxious time when they're trying to get that visa, we know that process generates really two questions, right? And those questions is the number one question that our customer experience team here gets asked. And by extension, I think it's probably the number one question that HR professionals such as yourselves probably get asked by your foreign national employees. And that question is really simply, what's going on with my case and what do I need to do next, right? And so, we've built out a lot of this case status functionality to answer those two questions as directly and as simply as possible. We're actually going to be releasing a new version of this within the next couple of weeks, so I'm really excited about that. And as part of that is we want to make this process as really as dynamic as possible, right? So every type of information that we're capturing within the Envoy application, we're using a lot of that information then to display sort of case status updates. So that may be things like as soon as that the LCA has been submitted on iCert to the government, we recognize that within our application and we can display, hey, LCA has been submitted. As soon as that LCA comes back from the government and has been certified, once that information has been uploaded into our platform, we can automatically display, a status update here saying, hey, your LCA has actually been certified, and so on and so forth. So we really go through that whole process from the date that that case was opened all the way to when that case is completed and hopefully approved. And in between those sort of major milestones that you see up there, the larger circles up there, the case status one being the first one that's already been completed, we'll walk both you and the foreign nationals through the progress of that case, updating you along the way so that you know exactly the answer to those two questions, what's going on with my case and what do I need to do next. So in the top left up there, you have what we refer to as our case status, which is just a brief text explanation of where your case is currently. And then we're also building in some additional information around the action needed. And that's obviously always dynamic because the actions that you as an HR professional may need to take are very, very different than, or potentially very different than those that the foreign national may need to take. An example of that, maybe you've completed your questionnaire already, your portion of the questionnaire, and you've uploaded all the necessary documents. Well, in that case, we want to let you know straightforward that there's nothing that you need to do. On the foreign national side of things, when they log in, and they will see a very different view, tailored specifically for them. At that point, we may need to say, you've completed your questionnaire, but we're still missing these 3 or 4 documents. So this case status and milestones view gives you and your foreign nationals with which you're working a really detailed overview of what's going on with their case and what those next steps are, so that ideally, they're not coming to you and asking those questions over and over again.
Right. Thank you for that very great description. So again, Michael, turning to you from a client relations aspect, how big of a difference does this make?
Yeah, I think it's a huge difference. Transparency is one of the main words we hear back from our existing clients as a benefit of the platform, and that transparency goes both ways for the foreign national and for HR. And as Greg mentioned, what this does as far as being able to tell both parties exactly where they are in the case, what stage they are, as well as what needs to be done next to get the case moved forward, is it really eliminates and cuts off a lot of the email back and forth with HR or with the legal team, wondering what's going on with the case, what do I need to do next, how can we get it moved forward. So it's again kind of a time saver, eliminates a lot of emails going back and forth, and eliminates a lot of frustrations along the way as well.
Definitely, and I like that you brought up transparency and about the reducing the need for email, because that's going to lead us right into our next feature that's really going to help, and that's Transparent Communication Center. So as we mentioned at the top of this presentation, slow communications are a huge pain point for many individuals in HR and the foreign nationals. But that changes with the Transparent Communication Center, where you have unlimited access to an attorney or a global case specialist for any and all immigration-related questions. So now this is where I would like to loop in Jacqueline. Jacqueline, we didn't forget about you, but I'm curious if you can tell our audience about some of the common questions you may receive in the Communication Center.
Yes, of course. So probably some of the most common questions I see on a day-to-day basis from foreign nationals is centered around travel. So travel concerns and their visa status. So can I travel right now based on my pending application, or I have to travel, what do I need in order to apply for a visa stamp? And those are very important questions to direct to an attorney, because there are a lot of different things that go into play into advising on whether travel is appropriate at a particular time in the visa process. So the Communication Center is a great way for the foreign national to be able to ask those questions directly to the attorney without having to go through the employer representative as a middleman. And then the employer representative also has visibility into that, so they're aware of any travel plans that the foreign national is planning. So that is very helpful. Probably the second most common question I get is questions about eligibility for certain visa types and the green card process. So that's a great way for foreign nationals to ask about, what kind of green card could I qualify for? What is the timeline for that? Who has to initiate the process? And things of that nature. You do get questions about government processing times a lot, but now with the advancements in the Envoy platform and the visibility they've built into the government processing times, those are questions come up less and less because they can get those answers without having to ask the attorney through the platform.
Great, gotcha. Thanks for describing some of those questions that you receive in the Communication Center. And the communication is going to become a vital part, especially with H-1B cap season right around the corner, and that leads us right into this next feature that I think is really cool. I've seen it in action, but just to kind of give some background, for our listeners, as your companies continue to grow, you may need to hire and sponsor foreign talent, but in some instances, you may face a challenge managing cap cases. And these difficulties are even greater when trying to manage the status of multiple H-1B cap petitions, especially in a spreadsheet. Those spreadsheets can just become beasts of their own. So up here we have an H-1B cap management dashboard. And Greg, my question to you is, how can this help make the H-1B cap season, this upcoming H-1B cap season, easier?
Sure. So this is a brand new feature that we just launched within the last month. And that was based on a lot of conversations that we've had with our customers. And this particular feature was really developed in conjunction with a lot of our larger enterprise customers. So customers that handle and do an awful lot of H-1B cap cases. And what they were really looking for is they were looking for just a simple, direct overview of what's going on with all of their cap cases, right? We know that cap is an incredibly stressful period for a lot of HRs. You have an awful lot of cases that you're potentially managing at one time. The time is obviously of the essence, and it's really, really critical. So making sure that you're hitting deadlines. So providing users within just a summary overview of what's going on at each individual stage of their cap cases was really, really important for our customers. And so that's what we would decide to go out and we built. And this is just a screenshot, but what you would see is if you clicked on each one of those tabs up at the top, so where you see the questionnaire submitted 5 and LCA submitted 2, each one of those tabs lets you filter directly down into those particular cases. So if you need insight into how many LCA has been certified and for whom, simply clicking on that tab would directly filter that view for you, so that you can really direct your attention just at those cases where the LCA has been certified. It also provides you, if you can see on the sort of over there on the right-hand side of things, it shows you what actions are needed for those particular cases, right? So in that first column or that first row rather, the questionnaire needs to be completed. If you go down one, there's some documents that need to be uploaded. And that would take you directly into that questionnaire and take you directly to that place within the questionnaire so that you can really get that action item knocked off your list as quickly as possible. So this is sort of the view that you would see currently all the way up until April 5th. And at that point, that view, the default view here, will switch over. And it'll show you all the next steps that happen after your case has been submitted to government. So, for example, how many cases have been selected in the lottery or not selected in the lottery, how many have been approved or denied, and so on and so forth. So it really gives you, a very simple way of managing your entire cap season within 2 simple screens.
Awesome. And you've shown me this before, and it's honestly really, really cool feature. So Jacqueline, can I ask you to chime in here from your perspective on hear your thoughts on the H-1B CAP management dashboard?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, this is a great feature because while a lot of companies are managing, a lot of foreign national petition filings throughout the year, I mean, CAP is just a very heavy period for everyone. So instead of managing just like 1 or 2 at a time or 5 at a time, companies could be managing 20 plus cases that all have the same deadline for filing. So this is a helpful feature just to make sure everything's on track, because it is, I mean, all immigration filings are very deadline driven, but CAP especially, because you only have a 5 business day period to file those petitions to make them in the lottery. So being able to manage that, make sure you're not falling behind, make sure we're getting the LCA, which is the labor condition application that is required for all H-1B cases, filed in enough time to make the April 1st to 5th filing deadline for the petition. This feature is very helpful, so a case doesn't fall through the cracks amongst all the other filings like extensions and green cards and other cases that are being managed on the platform as well. This is just one handy place to go and make sure, okay, am I on track for these CAP cases? It also helps check for their current status and any H-1B alternatives, that they don't get selected in the lottery and things of that nature, just so we can be ahead of those issues when we file in the CAP.
Gotcha. Thanks. Now moving on to our next tech feature, the I-94 travel log. And Greg, I'm going to let you kind of talk a little bit more about this one.
Sure, happy to. This is, I think, one of the coolest features that we've honestly developed over the course of the last few months. And we're always looking for opportunities, and this comes back to the first slide that we had where we're discussing the SMART questionnaire, right? You're all busy individuals. The last thing you need to do is spend time, filling out forms. And at the same time, we need certain information, and we want to track certain information so that we can provide best-in-class service to both you and the foreign nationals that you're working with as your employees. So the I-94 travel log is, it's another way that we're trying to be more intelligent about staying on top of critical information, at the same time, facilitating that information gathering so that you don't have to spend your time doing that, or your foreign nationals don't have to spend their time doing that. So what this is in a nutshell is we've integrated with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection website, and we have captured certain information. We do this both in the employee profile, but also within the various questionnaires. And what it lets us do is, once we've captured certain information about a foreign national, their name, their passport number, where their passport was issued, and so on and so forth, then we can automatically retrieve all of their I-94 information directly from the CBP website. So previously, to be able to get that information, the process is you go into Google, into Chrome, you pull up the CBP website, you log in, you enter a bunch of information, you get all the way down to where it displays your I-94 travel information, so your I-94 number and your travel history for the last 5 years. And then the only way to actually get that information is then to manually write that down, right? So it's a time-consuming process. It's annoying. And so instead of going through that whole workflow, it's really just one click of a button, right? So all the foreign national has to do is they have to consent to the CBP terms and conditions. And once we do that, we pull all of that information back. So once again, your I-94, the I-94 information, the travel history for the last 5 years. And we use that to both help alert you as HRs to potential issues where someone's I-94 information might be expiring. But like I said, we also use that to populate certain questionnaires where that information is also needed. So once again, this is just one example. We're always looking for these types of opportunities where we can use technology and where we can use intelligence to make your lives and those of your foreign nationals ideally a heck of a lot easier.
And Jacqueline, I think you're going to want to piggyback off of what Greg just was talking about.
Yes, I do. This feature is one I really like as an attorney, and I'm really happy to see this implemented because the I-94 tracking is really important to make sure, one, to track someone's status, eligibility. So like H-1B has a 6-year limit, and sometimes we want to track to make sure we're keeping track of that max out date and we're on time to start the green card process. And also the I-94 controls the foreign nationals' lawful stay in the U.S. So anytime they travel and the I-94 is updated, we want to know about that, and they should know about that, so we can check for any issues like the CBP making a mistake and shortening their I-94, or the CBP shortening their I-94 because their passport is expiring. So the I-94 tracking is extremely important for multiple reasons. And it's something that comes up a lot when we're preparing new cases, and we all of a sudden find out that the company's hiring for a transfer had their I-94 shortened 6 months ago because of a passport expiration, and the foreign national didn't check on that when they re-entered. So this is a really great feature just to make sure to keep on top of compliance as far as I-94 or I-94 expirations, and also, again, really helpful for trying to track how much time someone has left in a particular category, such as H-1B or L-1 that do have limits.
Gotcha. Glad you brought up compliance. We're going to be getting there in just a second, but first, we just want to talk about the global travel assessments that provide instant insight on potential visas for global assignments, and also provides you, the user, with rich visa content. Greg, can you dive just a little bit deeper into the global travel assessments and just how it helps, how it can help everyone listening in?
Sure, absolutely. So, it used to be, I think, a lot of companies really focused on we need to hire foreign nationals here in the United States. We need, there's, an infinite number of articles talking about how many foreign nationals, how many STEM positions are open or left open in the United States, and so on and so forth. And while I think that's still true, obviously, more and more companies are looking to staff people, not just here in the U.S., but overseas, or companies in the U.K. need to staff people to France or to China, and so on and so forth, right? So we're really starting to think much more about this. I think Envoy has been known for a very long time in sort of the U.S. immigration space, but increasingly it's a global world, right? And as part of that, we need to facilitate global mobility. And so this is certainly a strong step in that direction. And so what the Global Travel Assessments tool really does is it lets you as you as HR professionals very quickly determine, if you need to staff somebody to the UK for 6 months on a work project, or if you need to staff somebody to China for 3 or 4 days for some meetings or something like that. It very quickly lets you determine what type of work permit or business visa is potentially required there, by just answering a few simple questions. Now, once you've gone through that initial assessment, our global team, and we partner with law firms all over the world to make this happen, but our global team will actually go ahead and they're going to review all of that information, and they're going to determine what it is you need, and they'll start working on that case for you straight away. So the Global Travel Assessments tool is just a quick way of saying, all right, I know I need to staff this person to this country for this amount of time. What's the most likely visa? Is that something that, is going to work in our given time frame? And it'll give you all that sort of rich content around those different visa options. And then working in conjunction with our global team, we'll move you on to the next stage in that process, which would be to actually get that visa or work permit.
Awesome. And speaking of the global mobility, we do have a couple webinars. I'm going to do a plug on that one, especially particularly around Brexit and a couple ones in the future. So keep an eye on that. We'll definitely reference the global travel assessments because, as Greg said, it's a huge, huge helpful tool. So back to what Jacqueline had mentioned regarding compliance, and we just want to talk, and as we move into compliance, as you listen in, obviously employees with open petitions are only a portion of your global talent. So you do want to ensure that you're managing your entire global workforce compliantly. Greg, how can technology help our listeners stay compliant at all times?
Sure. So the screenshots that you're actually looking at right now is that there's a couple different things going on. One, we've created a digital public access file manager. So we want to make sure, obviously, that you have all of the documentation that you need at all times. And I think the sort of standard way of handling that in the past has been, and we all have them, right? We have gigantic filing cabinets where we've stuffed all of the paperwork that we need for whatever, right? The problem, obviously, with that is paperwork gets lost, things get shuffled around, files get misplaced, and so on and so forth. And then when you need to access that information quickly, sometimes it's not available. Sometimes you can't find that one piece of paper that shows that you did A, B, C, or D, right? That you need to show that you have in fact been compliant. And so we've developed a number of compliance products that help facilitate that process. The Public Access File Manager is one of them, right? Where for every employee that's gone on, an H-1B, for example, there are certain files that are mandated that you maintain. And that Public Access File Manager shows you not only lets you store all those files electronically, but it also shows you for what potential employees you don't have the requisite information, right? So it's a very simple way of giving you that oversight into whether or not you are compliant with respect to your foreign national population. You can always run an audit at any time, and that's what that sort of second smaller screenshot shows you. It just go ahead. You kick that audit off. It's going to run through your entire employee population. Excuse me, there's a little tongue twister there. But it'll run through your entire employee population and make sure that we have all the necessary information that if you get audited, that information is then available for you. We do the same thing for perms. So we put together a perm audit file that contains all of your information around all the recruitment advertisements that ran, when they ran, and what venues they ran. We track all of the applicants for a given job and all the actions that were taken with respect to a given applicant. So the compliance tools that we're offering, I think they really offer, in this day and age, they offer you a way of making sure that you are really on top of your documentation, and that documentation is then readily available literally with just the click of a button, right? So if somebody shows up at your office and says, hey, we're here to do an audit of, Bob Smith, well, then it's very simple to just simply log into the Envoy platform, log into the compliance products that we offer, and then, download all that information and provide it to the official in charge.
Michael, we're going to forget about you, but can I have you chime in here and talk a little bit from the client perspective about compliance?
Yeah, definitely. I think, especially with the current climate surrounding immigration, a lot of a sense of security, I think, can be found in these two features, especially the audit that you can run for your existing employees. These can be scheduled quarterly, twice a year, where an email notification is sent out to all your foreign nationals, confirming that the work site, maybe their work from home, that their work site location has not changed, that their salary hasn't changed, that their job description hasn't changed. So we ask them to confirm that information. That their response then is kicked back to our platform, and we flag any discrepancies against the petition that was filed with the USCIS versus the information confirmed or edited by the employee. That then will let us know if indeed, there is a potential compliance issue. The law firm, GIA, will review the specifics of the situation, and then, perhaps everything's okay, or maybe an amendment is needed to be filed with USCIS to ensure compliance. So, Definitely, I think a lot of value has been found just, again, in the sense of security that can be gained from both these two features, as well as with the public access file manager, as Greg said, just having everything in one spot, being able to see what might be missing from a file very easily and clearly, being able to upload it into the platform, and then being able to access it really at a drop of a hat.
Gotcha. Thank you. And that brings us into our final tech feature that can help our listeners today. We'll call it analytics. So the more insight you have into your immigration program, the more you can leverage data to manage budgets, create efficiencies, and reduce the compliance concerns that Greg and Michael had just talked about. If you take a look at your screen, there we have two screenshots up there. And Greg, I'd like to talk about the screenshots that are visualizing cost projections. So my question is it possible to take the guesswork out of budgeting for immigration with the help of technology?
Sure, absolutely. So as Eric mentioned, the first screenshot that you see right up there in sort of the lower right-hand side of the screen, it's obviously some dummy data, but what it provides is really an overview of all of your immigration spend over the course of a year, 2 years, 3 years. And if you see over on the right-hand side of things, where you can go ahead and you can actually change the timeline on that. And what that information will really let you to do, it'll let you summarize how much have I spent on immigration over a given time frame, and we really let you break that down and make that as granular as possible. But also, and we're not actually showing that in this particular report, but we also then, it's not just what you've spent, which is the view that you're looking here, but based on what you've spent in the past, we can also estimate what you are going to spend in the future as well, right? And that can be hugely, hugely helpful when it comes to budgeting for the following year. You have stakeholders, I'm sure, that want to know, well, how much have we spent on immigration the last year, and what are we going to spend it on the next quarter, right? And we have a lot of customers who've gone through and they said, this is amazing. In the past, it took me, a day or, multiple hours to pull all that data together and pull that information together. Instead of having to do that manually, all of that information is just available here through the reports that we, sort of provide for you by default. But there's obviously a lot of other types of data that you, as HR professionals, need to be able to do your job and to be able to communicate, confidently and accurately with all the stakeholders that you're working with at your organizations. And so that may be, how many H-1B cases do we currently have in progress, or how many, green cards have we filed over the last 6 months? Where are our employees located here in the United States or globally, right? So those are all the types of reports that we have within the Envoy platform that we provide by default. In that information can obviously be customized. A lot of it can be obviously exported so that you can play around with it in Excel or whatever other types of spreadsheet programs that you may use to do your own types of analysis as well.
Awesome. And that, everyone, brings us to our questions section. Michael, Greg, Jacqueline, thank you so much for just talking a little bit more in depth about Greg, obviously, the tech features, Michael, how they help clients and can help improve, and Jacqueline from the attorney perspective. So again, if you'd like to ask a question, please do so using the GoToWebinar function you see on the right-hand side of your screen. And as we wait for some questions to come in, I would just like to talk about some future webinars that we have. Hard to believe that today's already the last day of January, so we have our February webinars already planned. This upcoming Tuesday, we have the ABCs of Immigration, the HR Guide to U.S. Immigration Visas and Green Cards. Whether you're brand new to managing an immigration program or just want to brush up on some knowledge, this is a perfect webinar. And then Thursday, February 14th, we're continuing our H-1B CAP series, how to support your employees before, during, and after the petition. And then please be sure to follow Envoy on social media and subscribe to our blog so you are aware of the latest breaking news updates, and as new features and great content pieces come out, such as our H-1B CAP petition survival guide. And finally, everyone listening in, we have some SHRM and HRCI activity ID. So feel free to copy these down. These will also be sent in tomorrow's follow-up email. All right, so as we take a look at a couple of questions here, give us a few seconds. All right, Greg, so this question for you. Is the I-94 tracking only available by individual, or is there a report that will update all I-94 data for individuals in your population?
Yeah, that's a great question. The I-94 travel tool that we've developed is something that we just recently launched. And so right now it's actually only available on an individual basis, but it's something that we, as this question really rightly points out, that's something that we want to track for all employees. So we're actually in the process of developing something for that right now. And I think, it's not just tracking that information, it's also developing an additional compliance-related feature around that I-94 information, right? So in the same way that we want to make sure that all of your public access file information or your perm audit file information is accurate and up to date, we want to make sure that your entire employee population is accurate and up to date with respect to their I-94 info. So that's something that we're actively working on, and hopefully we'll have some additional, updates on that in the near future.
Great, thank you. All right, well, I think that's going to be, those are the only question. I'm going to end things a little bit early, give people back 15 minutes of their time. Again, thank you everyone for listening in. So happy you're here. Greg, Michael, Jacqueline, thank you so much for coming in. I know we're in Chicago, so it's I haven't checked the temperature, but pretty sure it's still negative degrees out. So thanks for hopping on, coming in the office. Everyone listening in, thank you so much. Again, this webinar recording will be sent to everyone, so please keep an eye out on that email. And thank you, and have a great weekend.